Hi readers, welcome back to my channel, Lila Wanders and Reads. Lee here, and welcome to the new subscribers I got over the week. Glad to have you here. This is my weekend books. It is where I talk about now the books that I've read over the past week since my last video. This week is a little short of my usual amount of reads. I only read 3 books this week. I am currently filming this on a Saturday. It'll post on Monday. I could probably push and finish a 4th book, but I decided not to do it. I have started on it. I'll tell you about it. But one of the things that I found this year is that somehow, completely unplanned, the books that I read in a week seem to all have like a common theme. And this week was no different. I have been, let me rewind for a second. Like many people, most of you guys, I do love to read to escape, but I have been pushing myself this year to stretch my boundaries, to read things that are not so easy for me. I've been reading more literary fiction. Right now, I am doing a kind of mini project where I read a book from the Booker Prize long list, and then I read a banned book. I did a whole video on that, on banned books, and the books that I have that were banned from public schools throughout the state of Utah. So I am bouncing back and forth between those right now, and I'm really having a good time. But the theme on this week seems to be learning history through reading. And I'll start with the first book that I read this week. It took me 3 evenings to finish this. That's a little longer than usual for me. I am going to do a whole book review on My Friends by Hisham Matar, but I love it when there's a bit of history in a book that makes me step outside the book and go do a little more research, really just Google searching. And for this, it was the 19... Lord, now I've forgot the year. I think it was 1974. Shooting out from the Libyan embassy in London out to the protesters that were protesting the Gaddafi regime. And it has been fascinating. I've done a small dive onto it, but mostly all I could find out was about the female police officer who was killed in that shooting. A lot of the student protesters survived but were wounded, and I could not find hardly anything on them. I imagine that was for their own protection. Anyway, let me tell you about this. I absolutely love this book. One evening, as a young boy growing up in Benghazi, Khalid hears a bizarre short story read aloud on the radio about a man being eaten alive by a cat and has the sense that his life has been altered forever. Obsessed by the power of those words and by their enigmatic author, Hisham Zoa, Khalid eventually embarks on a journey that will take him far from home to pursue a life of the mind at the University of Edinburgh. There, thrust into an open society that is light years away from the world he knew in Libya, Khalid begins to change. In London, he attends a protest against the Gaddafi regime only to watch it explode into tragedy. In a flash, Khalid finds himself injured, clinging to life, and unable to leave Britain, much less return to the country of his birth. To even tell his mother and father back home what he has done on tapped phone lines would expose them to danger. When a chance encounter in a Paris hotel brings him face to face with Hisham Zoa, the author of the fateful short story, Khalid is subsumed into the deepest friendship of his life. It is a friendship that not only sustains him, but eventually forces him, as the Arab Spring erupts decades later, to confront agonizing tensions between revolution and safety, family and exile, and how to define his own sense of self against those closest to him. This was, first of all, the UK has another cover for this, and I really liked that one better until I started reading it, and then this cover made complete sense to me, and overall, I think I gave this book 5 stars, which is rare for me. I loved this book. I hope it makes the short list. Next up, I read a banned book, and this was a reread for me. When I read it the first time, I remember not liking it very much, and I remember why now. Forever by Judy Blume was kind of boring. Norma Klein calls it touching and wonderfully true to life. It was true to life. The entire, probably 3/4 of the book was just the girl's relationship, Catherine's relationship with Michael, and it's boring. It would be as though you read conversations that you have when you're with your significant other. It was just average. This is banned for sexual content. Honestly, I don't think it should be, because it's actual realistic sexual content. It's the first time that you do it, and it's not all, hearts and flowers or whatever. It's painful, it's messy, it's just sex. But one of the things that the banners fail to do is to look at the overall content of the book. This did pick up in the last quarter of the book for me. But the first 3/4, like I said, it was a slog. Interesting to me is comparing this book and Catherine's visit to Planned Parenthood for birth control to Elana K. Arnold's What Girls Are Made Of, and her visit to Planned Parenthood to get an abortion and to get birth control for next time. And what's interesting is what was available in the mid-70s versus what is available now. So, teachable moment there. Also, there was another, oh shit, is what I wrote, because I had forgotten about something that happened. Another teachable moment to talk about teen suicide, mental health struggles, and it was just, again, something that you could take from the book and relate it to in real life that would be helpful to students. Finally, this is not a Booker book. This is a Booker book prep book. So I'll talk about that, the Booker book that I'm going to read next. But this is the book that came before it, and I realized that I needed to read There by Tommy Orange before I moved on to Wandering Stars. This is another book that was a little bit hard for me to get into the rhythm of. There's a cast of characters. He talks about it at the beginning, and then each chapter is from a different character's perspective. The author plays with time, so you don't know, it's not linear. You're kind of jumping around in time, but all headed to this one moment. Again, this really picked up during the second half of the book. Okay, sorry. So here, unexpectedly, let me read to you what this is about, and then I'll tell you what I learned from this was so unexpected in this book. So, Tommy Orange's wondrous and shattering novel follows 12 characters from Native communities, all traveling to the Big Oakland powwow, all connected to one another in ways they may not yet realize. This is true. It starts adding up towards the end. Among them is Jackie Redfeather, newly sober and trying to make it back to the family she left behind. Dean Oxendine, pulling his life together after his uncle's death and working at the powwow to honor his memory. 14-year-old Orville, sorry, my nose is running, allergies, coming to perform traditional dance for the very first time. Together, this chorus of voices tells of the plight of the urban Native American, grappling with a complex and painful history with an inheritance of beauty and spirituality, with communion and sacrifice and heroism. So, what I didn't expect in this was to learn. I literally wrote, what? Look up. That in the late 1990s, Saddam Hussein commissioned a Quran to be written in his own blood. Now, Muslim leaders aren't sure what to do with it. To have written the Quran in blood was a sin, but to destroy it would also be a sin. And I was like, what? I actually stopped, put down the book, and got up Google. And from what, I did a very short skim of the surface, but from what I can figure out, Saddam Hussein did have a Quran commissioned, and it is allegedly written in blood, but there's dispute about whether it was his blood because of the amounts he claimed to have given, but it's too much in the time period, he said. Speculation that it could have been some of the people that he punished. And again, a connection between two totalitarian regimes in history. So this was, I had no idea about that. So it was really, really fun to look at. This book, hailed as an instant classic, has mixed reviews on Goodreads. And one of them I wanted to address. I can understand a lot of them. It did take me a while to find my rhythm on this book. And it was never enough to make me put it down. I just had to work a little bit. But one reviewer said that the book didn't make me feel happy or inspired. And I'm not sure that books are always necessarily supposed to do that. I talked at the beginning about liking to read to escape. And I do like books that make me feel happy. But I think sometimes the most powerful books don't make you feel happy or inspired. They're meant to teach you something, maybe about a certain culture, in this case Native Americans, or in the case of my friends, Libyans in exile, and what it's like to be in exile and not go home. That book wasn't a happy book either. It's life. Anywho. Those are the books that I read this week. This week I am still working on The Woman That They Could Not Silence. Really, really good. I'm struggling though. I don't read nonfiction on the weekends. I read for about an hour, or in this case 31 pages-ish during the weekdays, but I don't read it on the weekends. I might, when I get closer, if I don't finish it next week, I might read a little bit on the weekends. I am pushing to finish this by the end of August because I've got another book that I really want to start that hopefully will be featured in my weekend books next week. Fingers crossed. On the audiobook side, I am still listening to the History of Sound stories by Ben Shattuck. I will probably be listening to this for a while. I finished the first story, which is what the book's named after, The History of Sound. I'm currently listening to the second story, which I did have to take a break for a few days from listening so I could listen to some music. Again, I only listen to audiobooks when I drive, but I really am enjoying this. I'm finding a theme in here. Again, not like the theme from my physical books, but this book, in both the stories, the story I finished and the story I'm working on right now, have a PTSD connection, and I'm wondering if that's going to continue throughout. I actually, when I came home the other day from listening to this, I actually tabbed and annotated the physical book because I didn't want to forget the things that really stood out to me in this. So I'll continue listening to this next week as I drive to and from work. Right now, I am currently reading a banned book, and that is A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. I've had this book for probably over a year, and I've been hesitant to read it because it gets so much hype over on Bookstagram and with all the Romantasy fans. Nothing wrong with Romantasy, but it just got so much hype. I was like, do I want to read it? But now that this is a banned book throughout the state of Utah in public schools, I decided to pick it up. I got through a handful of pages, dozen pages this morning, and it's not bad. It's too early to tell for me. I am getting a Cinderella vibe, so I like that about it, and I will see where it takes me, and I'll talk about it next week in my weekend books. Now, I said I read There There. Oh, an important point about There There. When I saw the title, I thought it was like, they're there. Like you would try to comfort someone. But it's there. As in, there is no there. And he talks about the origin of that phrase, which was linked to Gertrude Stein, I think. I did not go look up that. I probably will this weekend sometime. But that was really interesting. Anyway, I read that in prep for a Booker Longlist book, Wandering Stars by Tommy Orange. This is a follow-up, and I don't want to read anything from this right now, but because I don't want to spoil anything, because I got spoiled on There. But this is, he's conjured the ancestors of the family readers first fell in love with in There. Warriors, drunks, outlaws, addicts, asking what it means to be the children and grandchildren of massacre. Wandering Stars is a novel about epigenetic and generational trauma that has the force and vision of a modern epic, an exceptionally powerful new book from one of the most exciting writers at work today, and soaring confirmation of Tommy Orange's monumental gifts. So I wonder if there will be a back and forth, if it will give us any insight into what happens towards the end of There. And I think I'm okay even if it doesn't, although I would have liked There to be just wrapped up one more little bit. And that is my weekend books. I will have links to bookshop.org for each of these books that I've mentioned. I will be back tomorrow with, hopefully, a book review for Book Talk Tuesday on My Friends. Again, I loved this so much. It was just a powerful read, and I really connected to it. And then I think Wednesday I'm going to do a book haul. We'll see. That's it for me. Thank you for watching and subscribing. Happy reading.